Lew, I got you on and I'm ranting here. I'm so excited because a few times in my life things have crystallized. And I know when I'm right. I know when I've done the historical research. And I know when the zeitgeist is there. And I have never, this is 10 times the electricity I've ever felt. Lew Rockwell, what do you say to what I've just laid out here? All I'm laying out is what our country was founded on. Can we rediscover the republic? Can it rise again? Will you help us get Ron Paul to lead this exploratory movement to really get aggressive?
Well, certainly, Alex, Ron Paul is the leader, as we saw in this, fantastic farewell to Congress speech, one of the great speeches of all of American history. He is the leader. He's going to continue to be the leader. I would say he's going to be a more effective leader now that he's out of electoral politics. He's got many wonderful things in store for us, plans that he can't disclose quite yet. But after the first of the year, when he's no longer in Congress, just wait for it. There's going to be great stuff ahead. But this principle of, I hate to quote Woodrow Wilson. He referred to it as self-determination, principle of secession. Ludwig von Mises famously said more than 100 years ago that no people or part of a people shall be held in a political allegiance or alliance to which it's opposed. It's wrong. This is, in fact, an ancient Catholic principle. It goes back to the Middle Ages of decentralization, that certain things should be handled at the level of the individual, others at the level of the family, others at the level of the local community. And you do not have the higher governments in society controlling the lower. You have it just the reverse. So this policy of decentralization, of secession, is absolutely a key principle of human liberty. Jefferson talked about it. He talked about the worst thing that could happen to this country is we'd get a consolidated government, a centralized government. But it's one of the bad things about government, many bad things about government. One of the bad things about government is they all get together to increase centralization. Hans Hoppe has pointed out why this is in their interest, so that you have, whether it's what's happening in the EU, individual countries conglomerating together to make a unified state in Europe, or at least that's what they want. It's already happened in this country. We've had state and local authority, needless to say, individual authority and other sorts of private authority wiped out or crushed by the federal government as it's become more and more of a centralized state. And these people, of course, all want a world government. They want, they want a North American Union. They want a world government, just the sort of horror that John Maynard Keynes used to campaign for, and every other terrible person, political person, maybe in the history of the human race. I'm sure the Pharaoh wanted to be head of the world too. So all these guys want this, but on the other side of power, glory for the state, conglomeration, centralization, stepping on other people, killing, mass spying, all the wonderful things the government does to us and to people in other countries. There is the opposing moral force, whether we call it secession, decentralization, and I would argue, as Hans Hoppe and others have pointed out, this really should go down to the individual level. We should be able to secede as individuals. Alex, like you, I never signed the U.S. Constitution. This, of course, was a point that Lysander Spooner made in the middle of the 19th century. We didn't agree to this. This is something that's imposed on us. So the government imposes its view on us, whether they call it the Constitution or, and of course, as Ron Paul pointed out in his speech, the Constitution has failed. The Constitution did not work. So we need to concentrate more on what's wrong with the government. We can't count on the government to save us. We can't use these government documents thinking that they're going to save us from the government. The government uses them against us. Now, I would agree with you that the Declaration of Independence, which is a declaration of secession, is maybe something we can very much count on rhetorically and its principles. But we always have to remember too, and Ron Paul has pointed this out just recently, America, if we think of the current American system, was founded by the secession of the 13 colonies, which were 13 little independent countries. And too bad we don't still have that system. But anyway, the 13 independent colonies seceded from Britain. This is a war of secession. It was not a war of conquest. The typical war, if we think of the kinds of wars the U.S. wages, it's always a war of conquest. The war that the Americans waged was to get out from under Britain. They didn't want to invade London and try to rule Scotland or Wales or whatever. They just wanted nothing to do with England in terms of political control. So, that's the way many of us feel about Washington, D.C. We feel it about, for that matter, our own state capitals, maybe even our local towns. They're all becoming tyrannical. Government at all levels is becoming more tyrannical by the day. Maybe that'll help us understand that government is not the answer. On the other hand, Jefferson pointed out that competitive sovereignties could help restrain government. And of course, it was the abolition of the states as competitive sovereignties to the federal government and the abolition of entities within the states also helped the centralization process. Jefferson said that people who had his sorts of political views stood with the states against the general government, stood with the towns against the states, stood with the wards against the towns, stood with the individual against everything. So that's the way to think of it. We want more decentralization, more power downwards. We don't want centralization. We don't, let alone, of course, we don't want world government or anything like it. We don't want a huge conglomerated nation state like the U.S., which is too big to be free.
Yes, sir.
You can't have 330 million people under one gigantic government and think you're going to have freedom. You don't have freedom. You have tyranny, which, of course, is what we've got.
Absolutely. Lew Rockwell's our guest. I'm sure you know, because we actually have an article off LewRockwell.com. Glenn Beck has told his listeners, and I don't want to get into a bashing thing with him. It may just be pure, fear or whatever.
Bash him.
Well, I mean, my point is he's saying, don't you dare sign that. You'll be a traitor. I have his quote in the video here. And then we get emails. I know you're getting them. We've got an example right here, anti-secession threat, where it's like, I strongly suggest you do not sign this petition or align yourself with any group that would place your allegiance to the country in question. How about our country got taken over by globalists who bragged that they've conquered America on CNBC and the Associated Press banking cartels that literally take my money and give it to them while they debase the rest of the money. And then they're saying it's racist. The new civil war is about to begin. Obama will be the new Lincoln. They've been getting ready for this forever. I mean, these people are truly sick. They have petitions signed to arrest us and to have federal militias come in and retake the states with volunteer Democrats who want to run around in little Soviet uniforms. They're dreaming of some Soviet... I mean, these people are sick.
Alex, I can remember when Glenn Beck said that Ron Paul supporters were potential terrorists, should all be investigated by the Army and potentially arrested by the Army.
Yeah, no, he called me a piece of garbage 2 days ago.
What is the concept of treason? I mean, that actually would argue that the government owns us, that we, even though they do nothing for us, they of course do plenty to us, that they own us and we're not allowed to get out from under them. And of course, this is the government in the American past has killed people for wanting to get out from under it. So we always have to be aware that they are violence incorporated. On the other hand, we don't need violence. We have the ideas, the right ideas on our side, the ideas of freedom, the ideas of self-determination. Who is Barack Obama or Mitt Romney or Mitt Romney's assistant, Glenn Beck, to tell the average American family that the feds in Washington should be running them, should be supervising them as to how they raise their children, should be supervising their home, supervising their neighborhood, supervising their business? I mean, that's just, of course, pure tyranny. And again, we need a much smaller country. It would be a great thing to break up the U.S., just like it'd be a great thing to break up the European Union. If we look back to the wonderful example of Germany, Hans Hoppe points out, in pre-Treaty of Westphalia days, there were 700 little countries that made up Germany. They all were Germans. They were culturally and linguistically Germans, but they had a tiny government. And
it created competition between those and firewalls to tyranny.
No, this is the way it's supposed to be. This was the way it was in the Middle Ages, when you just have tiny countries. So we've had this terrible tendency by politicians to try to conglomerate together, the better to rip us off, the better to rule us, the better to put their boot on our neck. That's what they live for. They love, and of course, the better to wage wars, the better to take all our money through taxation.
Insider billionaire investors like George Soros and John Paulson have recently made massive moves into gold, purchasing what Bloomberg News described as gold hoards. Soros alone doubled his holdings in a single day. Russia's Vladimir Putin has doubled down on gold, increasing the country's holdings by over 100%. With $1.8 trillion under management, the bond king Bill Gross, the world's preeminent bond fund manager at PIMCO, has warned investors of the dangers of QE3 and inflation. And what's he betting on? You guessed it, gold. Friends, this is Alex Jones for MidasResources.com. For more than 15 years, I have exclusively used Midas Resources for all my precious metal needs. Whether it's bullion or collectibles you're looking for, Midas Resources is simply the best. I own my gold as a hedge against inflation. This Federal Reserve fiat currency could go the way of the Deutschmark and the Weimar Republic anytime. In these historically dangerous times, it makes sense to physically hold gold and silver. Midas already has some of the best deals in the industry. But if you give them a call and mention the radio special, they will give you a list of the day's super specials. Midas brokers are standing by to answer all your questions at 800-686-2237. They also have a lot of informative free literature explaining the opportunities and risk of holding precious metals. They are ready to answer your questions at 800-686-2237. Again, that's 800-686-2237. We've seen this happen hundreds of times the last 1,000 years or so. We are in deep trouble. This country has cancer. All I say is we can debate smaller units later. The states are what could deliver that under the Constitution. We got to kick the globalists out of Washington and then reconstitute the republic if that's what the states chose. All I know is I want the foreign occupying force out. And Lew, I don't want to just move around and try to get people elected to Congress. I think it's now time to go to the states and say, hey, you want to secede or you want to develop a plan to have a new Declaration of Independence to kick the globalists out? Because the globalists, I know you've seen this in the news, they're bragging they've conquered our country. And I think that's pretty important that all these big mega banks and you know, CNBC and the Associated Press tell us we're now run by foreign banks, but that's a good thing. They know best. Yes, global government's here, but the ADL says you're a terrorist if you say there's a world government. You know, it's time to just go all the way here. What's your take on that?
Well, I think it is. You know, I think our ideas are winning. This is what bothers the opposition. And I think it's wonderful that if a state wants to, for example, seek to use gold and silver as money internally, or all those other kinds of things, get rid of federal regulations, nullify federal regulations. I remember the great moment when South Carolina, to oppose the rotten tariffs of Andrew Jackson, this had nothing to do with slavery, by the way, despite the propaganda. They said, if you try to raise taxes to the extent you're going to destroy us, if you try to do that, we're not going to go along. And if any federal officials come into our state to try to enforce this taxation, we're going to arrest them. So that was the first great nullification. And as Tom Woods has a great book on nullification. If you're interested in this topic, everybody, take a look at Tom's book.
And the power to tax is the power to destroy. We are being destroyed. We are being physically attacked financially by these people. Here's what I'm saying. I know the energy's there. If Ron Paul steps up and says he's going to lead a movement, I know they're going for internet freedom because they put out a questionnaire to Campaign for Liberty people. I looked at it and I said internet was important. So he's going with what his constituents of liberty have pushed for. But I think it's important to codify and go, look, this nullification is going to happen. Campaign for Liberty's got to get out front. Lew Rockwell's got to get out front. You've been out front. But say, hey, you know, this isn't what you say secession is. This is reconstituting the republic, kicking the globalists out, kicking the Federal Reserve out. I think we can rout these people. I'm telling you, there's a real revolutionary fervor there, Lew, and I think it's time to launch.
Well, Alex, we've got the truth on our side. And the truth is that we all have the right to be free. We're all born free until governments, of course, try to make us unfree. And this, again, as you've pointed out, this is a very ancient battle between freedom and the state. So secession is part of it. Self-determination, we have the right to that. They don't have the right to control us against our will. And we have the right ideas on our side. And we have to remember, you know, even the government is aggression, concentrated aggression. The freedom movement is non-aggression. So we're about voluntary association,
sure,
voluntary actions, and spreading the ideas. And more people are on our side. More and more young people.
Sure. What I'm saying is, let's escalate.
He's going to be leading this movement. He's going to be leading this movement.
Good.
He already is leading it, but he's going to continue to lead it.
Well, I know you talked to him quite often and got him on the show last week, and I'm glad that he's also taken over Campaign for Liberty and is reaffirming everything in there. ask yourselves, what are you doing in this time of great challenge? What are you doing to unlock minds? Ladies and gentlemen, final segment with Lew Rockwell on the Nightly News tonight. Myself and Sha'Carri Jackson are going to be playing excerpts of the speech, analyzing it, and I'm here, you know, getting the real patriots on. Edwin Vieira, Lew Rockwell, Bruce Fein, we're going to get him on, the leader of and the founder, another constitutional lawyer, and Ron Paul, former staffer. We're going to get you know, all the founder, Stuart Rhodes of Oath Keepers on, and I'm just saying, look, let's not just talk about move for nullification, states' rights. Let's do it. Let's if Ron Paul stands up and says, okay, you know, the states have a right to tell the federal government they become a foreign enemy. I mean, just bring it up. It's what it is. Call it like it is. He said it in his speech. We're being taken over by global government, and this isn't even secession. This is reconstituting the republic. No one's going to be able to argue with that or call it racist or all their garbage. And just move forward and do it. Just do it. And it's time to get on the offense. I'm ready. Lew Rockwell, we got 4 minutes left. You've got the floor. Again, I'm just putting out the ideas there. I know they're already there, but do you agree, accelerate it? And can you get in there as one of the main leaders of this and work with Ron Paul? Because I'm telling you, the zeitgeist is now. We've got to strike while the iron's hot.
Alex, this is the attitude we all have to have. First of all, this is how we start. If we're walking along the street and some guy comes up and shoves a gun in your rib and says, give me your wallet, maybe you're going to give him your wallet, but you're not going to give him your consent. You're going to realize you were robbed. That's the government. So you don't say, oh, thank you, sir, for protecting the public good and the common defense and everything by taking my money. Too many Americans have that attitude to the government. The government is our enemy. It's a parasite. It's not doing us any good. It's doing us immense harm. It's doing immense harm to the whole world. The U.S. government, the biggest, richest, most powerful government ever to exist. So first of all, we have to have, you know, the attitude that God created us free, and the government is in effect serving Satan by taking away our freedom.
Yes.
So we have, you know, that's the nature of the struggle. Again, you have to know something about economics. You have to know something about American history. You have to know something about political philosophy and libertarianism and so forth to arm yourself intellectually, help arm other people intellectually. This has to be an intellectual fight because they've got most of the guns, they've got the tanks, they've got the atomic bombs. We can't fight them that way.
And they used our energy and our smarts. They used our energy and our smarts to build it.
Well, yeah, that's right. But we are the majority. The people who are the ripped off are far more of us than the rippers off. So we can fight them. First, refuse to give them a consent. Educate yourself. Talk to your neighbors. Stir up trouble in an intellectual sense by telling people the truth of the situation. Pay no attention to, you know, the networks or the big newspapers. They're all, of course, just liars.
And they're all imploding. And Ron Paul called them state-run media. It's time to just come out with it.
Of course. They always use that phrase when talking about foreign media. But of course, these ABC and NBC and CBS, New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, it's so great to see all these people going down, of course. But they are the state-run media. They're in bed with the CIA. As the church hearings showed way back in the middle of the 1970s, the forgotten church hearings, the AP, New York Times, Washington Post, all these organs are in bed with the CIA and are engaged in propagandizing and lying to us. So just ignore them. Learn from people on the internet like you, Alex. Pay no attention to the official media except maybe to laugh at them, or maybe use it as a stimulus to get angry at them.
Declare them the enemy. Just
I like shouting at the TV set myself when I'm watching these things.
Exactly.
When I'm watching the news. So, you know, but just don't be fooled and learn some economics. The government is wrecking the country. It's wrecking our society. The big banks, of course, are doing very well, and the military-industrial complex, the other people who are ripping us off. But most of us are being harmed by the government, are being harmed by this agency that tells us that they're superior to us, that they can use their laws to hurt us, but their laws don't apply to them.
Absolutely.
They're
in closing,
you know what? They're not above the law. The moral law applies to them just as much as it does to us. Just because you're in a government suit like Mr. Petraeus with all those Boy Scout medals on his chest doesn't mean that he's better than you are. fact, you can know he's worse than you are.
LewRockwell.com. We salute you, Lew.
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.